Hannibal is a killer. Hannibal is a conqueror. Hannibal is the annihilator. The year 219 BC, the man, Hanibal Barka of Carthage, one of history's greatest and deadliest generals. Hannibal's home of Carthage is a commercial beacon on the northern coast of Africa. 400 short miles from Carthage is Rome. Hannibal's personal bloody invitation, hand-delivered to Rome, inviting them to join his deadly game of butchery and annihilation. Through the smoke and stench of scorched earth and torched Roman corpses comes Rome's response: capture Hannibal and crucify him.
It's a very famous scene by the Greek historian Polybius, where the Roman ambassador grabs his toga, a fold in each hand, and says, "Rome offers you peace or war. Choose."
Hannibal and the Carthaginians gladly choose to fight.
His whole life has been in a military camp, and here he watches his father and other general officers and learns how to command men.
It is finally Hannibal's hour. He is only 26 years old, but commands the entire Carthaginian army. But he is fierce, battle-tested, and driven. Hannibal launches his attack against Rome. The Second Punic War is on.
Hannibal amasses a strike force of about 50,000 soldiers. But because he has no navy, he's got to invade Italy by land.
Hannibal's on the move. From Spain, he leads his fighting force of about 50,000 north along the Mediterranean coast toward Rome. A grueling 2.5 months later, an exhausted but battle-ready Hannibal reaches the Rhone River. But Hannibal is shocked to discover the Romans had caught wind of the advance and launched a strike force to intercept. It is the great military Roman general Publius Cornelius Scipio who leads the attack against Hannibal. Scipio's force, 10,000 men strong, is in Massilia, a Roman ally on the Mediterranean coast. Hannibal's force, 5 times as large, has crossed the Rhone River. Scipio sends 300 of his cavalry up the Rhone to find Hannibal. Hannibal orders 500 cavalry to scout the Roman advance. The two reconnaissance units collide. Scipio forced Hannibal to change his plan. Now, instead of marching along the Mediterranean coast to Rome, Hannibal's attack will come from the north, through the Alps. Hannibal doesn't fully trust the Gauls, but eventually accepts their help. The Gauls direct Hannibal to a narrow pass which leads to a gorge. It's a trap. Gauls block both ends of the gorge, but Hannibal's troops fight their way out, leaving the butchered enemy in their wake. Rome answers with 40,000 of its own soldiers to face Hannibal's threat. Both armies are now on a collision course that will rock the ancient world and rewrite military history. The blood of 2,000 slain Roman soldiers drenches the ground. It is a shocking defeat. The Romans replace Scipio with General Sempronius Longus, a strong leader with an even stronger temper. Two enemy armies camp on opposite sides of the Trebia River, about 70 short yards apart. Hannibal's strategy? Take advantage of the frigid temperatures, the Roman commander's fiery temper, and use the element of surprise. 40,000 Roman infantry and 4,000 cavalry cross the river. They line up for battle in a formation called a legio, made up of several maniples. The Romans arrange themselves in a checkerboard configuration. This is a force specifically designed to move forward and crush its enemy. But Hannibal has his own crushing machines, pachyderms, the heavy tanks of the Carthaginian army. They charge at the flanks of the Roman cavalry. Hannibal's Carthaginian cavalry turns inward and smashes the Roman flanks. Hannibal surrounds the Romans on 3 sides, but he is not done yet. Hannibal has just crossed the Trebia River and has a bloody surprise for the Roman army. The Carthaginian cavalry blindsides the Romans. who are then pushed back toward the river and cut down mercilessly.
Of the 40,000 men, Roman and allies, that took the field that day, 30,000 died. It was the worst defeat that the Romans had suffered.
The horror of Trebia spurs the Roman Senate to raise 4 new legions, 20,000 men. Rome also appoints 2 new consuls to lead the men into battle, Gnaeus Servilius Geminus and Gaius Flaminius. Their target, Hannibal. Their mission, seek and destroy. In the spring of 217 BC, the Romans decide that the best way to block Hannibal's advance southward is to divide their forces. Geminus travels northeast to coastal Ariminus. Flaminius heads northwest to Arretium, but they leave a southern route open through the marshes of the lower Arno River Valley. But Hannibal remains unstoppable. He slips through the 2 Roman forces and arrives at Tuscany, a Roman ally, and torches the landscape. Hannibal continues to taunt Flaminius by marching his army right past the walls of Arretium, flaunting his courage and power. Finally, Flaminius takes the bait. Moving quickly, Hannibal and his 30,000 men race past the small village of Pasignano into a hilly forest along Lake Trasimene. Flaminius is in hot pursuit. Hannibal orders some of his men to camp at the far end of the valley, in plain view of all who pass through the defile. In the distance, Flaminius can see the fires of Hannibal's camp on the hill.
Flaminius thinks, I finally got him. I've got Hannibal trapped and it's time to tear him apart.
Flaminius orders 6,000 Roman soldiers to rush up the hill and attack Hannibal. Suddenly, Hannibal's men turn and run, enticing the Roman soldiers to pursue. Hannibal then springs one of the deadliest traps in military history. The battle rages along the shores of Lake Trasimene in northwest Italy. Hannibal's Spanish and African heavy infantry hit the Roman front. Wild Celtic tribesmen strike at the center. Numidian light cavalry crush the Romans from the rear.
The Romans are trapped. And in this terrible, they're in line of march, they're not even set for combat formation, their weapons on out, and they're taken right in the flank by this large army, and it just slaughters them. It slaughters them.
In one of the most successful ambushes in history, another Roman army has been wiped out. At age 27, Hannibal is already a legendary military tactician. In the face of this defeat, the Roman Senate makes a bold, perhaps desperate decision. They vote to appoint a temporary dictator over the military to put an end to Hannibal's reign of terror. He is Quintus Fabius Maximus. Fabius raises an army of 90,000 men, the largest yet in Roman history. But he isn't going to use them in direct combat against Hannibal.
And this becomes the famous Fabian strategy. Do not engage the enemy in head-to-head battle. Harass him. When he sends foraging teams to look for food, kill them. If anybody provides sanctuary in a small town, burn the place down.
Fabius's strategy leaves Hannibal and his men hungry and tired. They are constantly hunted and harassed and never able to resupply. Despite the strategy's success so far, the impatient Roman Senate forces Fabius to resign after 6 months. They return to their more typical mode of government, and Varro are chosen and directed to defeat Hannibal as quickly as possible. Varro roars into action and sends a fighting force to meet Hannibal near Cannae, Italy. Varro's colossal army is made up of more than 80,000 Roman and allied foot soldiers and 6,000 cavalry. It is the most massive Roman fighting force ever to take the field at one time. Varro arranges his soldiers in a typical Roman maniple formation, but adds a new twist to the old formula.
What they do is they pack themselves a little tighter than before so that the front is shorter, but the depth is thicker.
Only 300 feet away, Hannibal deploys his own infantry force of 35,000, but in a unique configuration, never before used on any Western battlefield. The Battle of Annihilation begins. It is the beginning of one of the greatest battles of all time. Hannibal has configured his army in a unique semicircle. On the flanks, the Carthaginian cavalry commander detaches part of his force to help the Numidian light cavalry on the opposite side of the battlefield. In the center, the Roman infantry drives Hannibal back. But it's a ruse. Hannibal is giving ground on purpose. The original bow shape of the Carthaginian line now resembles a V.
As Hannibal's infantry flexes inward, the Roman units are drawn deeper and deeper into a V-shaped line. And as they go further, they get completely packed together.
Pressed into this V, the Roman infantry can only move in one direction, straight ahead.
Livy, one of the Roman historians, tells us the pressure was so great that Roman soldiers' arms were forced against their bodies. They could not lift their sword.
On Hannibal's signal, the African phalanxes turn in toward the middle and crush the Romans from the sides. Hannibal blocks in front. The African infantry squeezes the side. Hannibal's older brother, Hasdrubal, uses cavalry to slash from behind. The Romans are jammed into a kill box.
Hasdrubal the Brilliant now rides around in back of the Romans, hits them in the rear. This is the famous double envelopment. It had never been done in the history of warfare before. Never. And it's a brilliant maneuver.
By the time the sun sets, Hannibal has slaughtered an unbelievable number of Romans.
The Battle of Cannae was so full of death that it gave rise to a new term in military terminology. It's called the Battle of Annihilation. The Battle of Annihilation. The enemy wasn't defeated, it was annihilated.
Cannae ranks as one of the deadliest and most brutal battles in history. More than 70,000 Romans are butchered in a single day. Hannibal is on the verge of realizing his dream of Rome's destruction. But the victory at Cannae will actually mark the end of Hannibal's military success.
After the battle, the commander of the Numidian cavalry, Hanibal, urges Hannibal to march immediately on Rome. But Hannibal refuses. This leads Hanibal to exclaim, "Hannibal, you know how to conquer, but you do not know how to use your victory."
Hannibal does try to negotiate a peace deal with the Romans after Cannae, but the Romans refuse. In fact, the Romans actually outlaw the word peace. No citizen could ever consider it out loud.
Ultimately, the Romans decide to return to the Fabian strategy of containment. Instead of trying to beat Hannibal on the battlefield, they will try to outlast him.
Think about this for a minute. Rome, with all their imperial destructive ways, says, you know what? We can't beat this guy. We can only harass him. We can only contain him.
Whatever the reason, he eventually abandons his quest to destroy Rome and sails back to Carthage. Hannibal's tactics and stealth, his bloodlust and determination, his savagery and genius are all taught to modern military commanders throughout the world.